Welcome to the Women of Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Calder-Hume. The Women of Ambition podcast is a place where we explore ambition. First, the radical act of acknowledging it within ourselves. Second, allowing space to explore what ambition means for each of us. And third, moving forward with intention. Today's discussion is extremely close to my heart. We are still on our segment about ambitious relationships. And today we get to look specifically at ambitious relationships with children. I love our discussion because I get to talk about homeschooling. We get to talk about road schooling. We get to talk about RV life. And I know that might feel off topic, but it's a part of my ambitious journey and my guest's journey of ambition. She is an entrepreneur and the mother of a couple neurodivergent kids, which is another tender topic to my heart, and has created a life that works for her and her family. And road schooling and entrepreneurship and travel, all these things that she has picked and created for her life and for her relationships with her children. And we talk about what that has looked like and the blessings and benefits of choosing this somewhat alternative approach. I think living in our ambition is alternative. Being an entrepreneur is somewhat alternative, and certainly living with your 4 children on the road for 2 years is a different path that not many people take. So I really appreciate our discussion today. Whether you are completely new to homeschooling or a homeschooler yourself, I think you're going to find a lot to take out of this that you can really respect and enjoy. So here we go. Today I have Meg Brunson here. Thanks so much for being here, Meg.
Thank you for having me.
So Meg is a mommy blogger turned Facebook employee who left the 9-to-5 for a life of freedom and flex, which I love. She's currently on an RV trip across the U.S. with her 4 kids and a dog, which if you are a longtime listener, you know I have also done that trip. And hers is even longer than mine, and it sounds just really exciting and fantastic. So I'm extra appreciative and grateful that Meg is here because I know how hard it is to find a quiet place and to find consistent Wi-Fi. That was the burden of my life the whole time we traveled. So I'm so grateful to have her here. She's a professional speaker, a children's book author, and the host of FamilyPreneur podcast, and the CEO of EIEIO Marketing, which is the most delightful name of a marketing company I've ever heard. And today we are going to look at ambitious relationships with our children, ambitious motherhood, and what that looks like for a woman who has passion and goals and drive and ambition that is happening all at the same time as motherhood. So thank you so much, Meg. I'm so excited to hear from you today.
Well, I'm so excited to connect with you.
So tell us a little bit about you and like ambition in your life. What does that look like? We have kind of an outline here.
Sure. So I feel like I've always been a go-getter. I've always been multi-passionate. So I like a lot of things, and I don't mean to sound like braggy, but I'm one of those people that I do a lot of things well, right? Yeah. So I have a lot of interests, a lot of passions, and I'm good at a lot of things. And because of that, I try to do a lot of things. So I always have multiple projects on the back burner. My entry into motherhood was not exactly planned, as some people can relate to. So when I had my first kiddo, I was a single mom, and I kind of just kept trying to fit into the corporate or the traditional work systems that I was raised, I think most of us were raised to believe was the track that we were supposed to be on, right? So you go to school, maybe you go to college, you get a job, and you spend the rest of your adult life working at that job. And it wasn't until my second kiddo where things started to change. So at that point, I'm with my current husband. I have my second kiddo, and things are not, they're not what we expected with them either. So a lot of developmental delays, a lot of doctor's appointments, therapy appointments, and suddenly the 9-to-5 wasn't accommodating what I needed in order to be that present advocate for my child. I started to tinker in entrepreneurship because I thought, maybe there's a better way. Maybe I could, be one of those people that starts a business and can work from home and still be a present parent. So the reason I wanted to start way back there is because the road to entrepreneurship isn't always, it isn't ever, I don't think, a straight line, right? Like it's a squiggly line. You go up, you go down, you go back. And I think that it's that ambition that ultimately drove me to keep with it, right? Like not to give up just because the one thing I tried, one thing, the first thing I tried, the second, the third, the fourth didn't work. It can be overwhelming and it can be frustrating and you can feel defeated and like you're on this little like hamster wheel where you just can't find what's going to work for you. After having my third child and almost dying a couple times, of course, I'm paraphrasing that story dramatically.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more there.
A whole other episode in its own. I determined I couldn't go back to work, period. End of discussion. My husband took 2 jobs in order to let me be home and figure things out. And I feel like it was really at that point where everything started to change. The way I perceived entrepreneurship, the way I perceived parenting, and starting to, instead of like looking for balance, but starting to blend the two things together so that my kids, my family was involved in their own age appropriate, unique little ways in my business. And I never felt, or I rarely felt, that I was neglecting one for the other.
That's really neat. So how long have you been working in that space now?
So I have been, like I said, I've yo-yoed back and forth. My current business that I'm running right now, I've been running for 5 years. And now we have 4 kids, 5 years into this business. But like I said, it started many, many years before then, trying to find my footing. And it wouldn't, I feel like that shifted mindset, that blending of family and entrepreneurship is really what made it all possible and made it possible to live this RV life that I'm sure, like I know you're familiar with, but we've been on the road now for 2.5 years.
That's so rad.
I love it. Not all rainbows and butterflies, right? But we've made a lot of amazing memories, even, despite the pandemic and COVID. And
that's amazing. Does that mean that you are also homeschooling your children?
Yeah, we were always public school people too, until we hit the road. So that was another one of those transitions we had to make. And I'm so grateful for the opportunities that we've been able to provide to the kids through travel. And I have this discussion with my husband a lot. My husband's a little worried that because they're not in traditional school, they're not keeping up with the curriculum of the other kids in their grades. And I'd say he's probably right, because we're not following a curriculum. So if you put my 5th grader next to another 5th grader, they probably don't know all of the same things. But just because they don't know the same things doesn't mean that they're not learning. It doesn't mean that they're not going to end up in the same spot, as that other 5th grader later. I think it's really opened my eyes to the different ways we can educate our kids. And it allows us to really cater the educational approach to each one of our kids. I've got one kiddo who just didn't do well in school, and not because she wasn't intelligent, but she just, like, sitting down in a classroom is not the best way for her to learn. But being able to go to museums and actually like meet people and talk to people and learn from hands-on experiences, she's thriving. And so I really have embraced this alternative form of schooling. We call it road schooling because we're not
that's
quite
what it is.
Homeschooling. We're schooling on the road, and we allow where we are to guide our lessons. So when we were in in California near Tahoe, like we learned about wildfires because there were wildfires going on. So we learned what started wildfires and what's good about them and what's dangerous about them. And when we were in the Grand Canyon, we learned about the Grand Canyon. Wherever we go, we just let that guide what we're learning about. The national park system is amazing. They have educational programs that are incredible and great building blocks, especially for people like me who aren't teachers, right? Like we're not teachers, but are stepping into that role, and we're learning right alongside our kids, and it's been incredible and amazing.
So that is like exactly our thing that we did. We had like a couple things going before we left, but I was still really new. And then we left on our trip and we mostly unschooled.
Yes.
And it was very location oriented, similar to you. And our goal was to hit all the national parks. And so we were able to utilize all those resources that were free. I mean, we had a park pass, but we're able to go and talk to the rangers and talk to those experts and experience things and go to the museums that were open because it was during the pandemic. So some of that stuff was closed, but my kids got a fantastic education about the Native people that live in America that got kicked out, that, all of this history that they wouldn't have been able to experience otherwise. And then geography and the legends surrounding the geography that we're visiting and being able to experience different seasons across the United States. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. It's just like textures of life and living that they get to experience and they've incorporated in them, like just naturally, just by like loving life. And they love to learn and they're curious, but yeah, it is hard when you sit down and you try and compare it to another child, or you try and say, what grade level are they understanding this at? Like, how do you even put that into words? My kids have, they've seen all the colors of foliage across the United States. They've been to all the different forests. They know what the bark feels like. They know what the air smells like. They've compared like humidity when they're breathing in Florida versus Washington, where you are now. And that's just hard to put into words. And I know this is getting off topic, but it's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And what is on topic is that your ambition for your family and your career has opened these doors for you to provide opportunities for your children. And they are going to become adults who are deeply grounded and have lived life. And I would think that they are going to really know what they enjoy doing. And they're going to know that there are lots of different ways to enjoy life. And I think also there's really something to be said for any kind of alternative lifestyle. Living in an apartment or a house or something stationary. It's so traditional. But when you're living on the road, like there is a lot of, I don't know if you felt this, but I felt I had to go against a lot of preconceived notions about what stability looks like, about what a healthy developmental process looks like, what a community looks like. And that is a gift to give our children. And homeschooling, like all of those things are throwing off the convention and building the life that you want. And that is like the most important gift I could give my children. And I see you doing that with yours. And I'm just so happy for you and excited.
Yeah. I mean, they've learned a lot about rolling with the punches.
Yeah, you have to. You absolutely have to.
You're about an hour away from where you're supposed to be in Connecticut, and you bust an axle on the side of the road on a Sunday. So nothing's open. You roll with the punches. And it's tough, even as a parent, as an adult, right? To like cope with those huge changes. But to be able, the kids are like, another tire, and we just make an adventure out of it. And they know that they can be scrappy and they can look for the best in every situation. And just, I feel like our motto, what I say all the time is, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it's going to work, but we'll figure it out. And we always do.
I love that. And we've had those experiences too, where we end up stuck in some small little town in the middle of the United States. And sometimes it's planned because we have like a 13-hour drive and we need to break it up because we're still working full time during the week. Sure. But sometimes something will break or whatever. And you know what? Every single place that we've stopped at, every single town, we have found culture and people and history and something to learn and friendships and beautiful parks and just all kinds of beauty across everywhere we go. And it's that gift to know that no matter your circumstances, you can find the beauty in it. And we got to learn that over and over again, even in the middle of hard things, or, our water tank leaked and we ran out of water and we're functioning off the bottled water we're carrying around until the RV shop opens, like all those kinds of things that happen. How has your relationship with your children changed while you've been on this trip for the last 2.5 years?
Oh my gosh, like unbelievable. I feel like all of our relationships with each other have changed in unbelievable ways. We're very close. Like we're close all the time.
Physically.
Right.
Are you in an RV then? Like what class?
Sure.
Class A?
We have a travel trailer. So a
travel trailer. Okay.
Travel trailer. I'm actually recording in my car right now. We have an SUV that tows the travel trailer. And it's a 35-foot travel trailer. It does have a couple slides on the sides, which means it expands a little bit width-wise once we're parked. Just in case anybody listening doesn't know what
that's good. That's good. You're good.
And so, but it's a tight space. The kids have a bunk room in the back. So all 4 kids have their own bunk with their own little curtain in their own room in the back. My husband and I sleep in the front. And then in the middle is like our living room, kitchen, dining room.
Everything
all
room.
One thing, right? The everything room. So there is some separation there. But I mean, we have one bathroom. It's really tiny. And that's what we have. Like, we're all in there. So out of necessity, and I guess I'm grateful for this because I suppose it could go either way, right? In tight quarters with people, you either learn to love them or you despise every moment. And we've just gotten so much closer. I feel like the kids, my kids are also different ages, right? I have a 6 and an 8-year-old. I call those our little 2. And then our big 2 are 10 and 14. And so our older kids are definitely in that tween teenage space, which can be a little frustrating if you've got older kids. You probably know that. But living on the road, they miss the school life, right? Like they miss friends and having typical school, but there also isn't typical school right now. So that's a lesson they've also, kind of come to deal with. But I feel like it has allowed us to really deepen our relationships. We have a lot more talks. They open up to me, dare I say, more than I ever opened up to my parents. And I love that. Like, we're still working on, making sure that we're not like always friends, right? Like there is that, as parents, like we do have that, power, if you will. I don't know what else to call it, over the kids to ensure that they're safe and healthy and all of those things. But I do feel like it has allowed us to build more of a friendship than we had when we were stationary. And the little 2, it's a little bit of a different situation because my little one has never been in traditional school. But the bond there has just been so strong. And I love that we've been able to really raise them without a ton of outside influence. I don't want to make it sound like they're antisocial. Like we can talk about that too, about social situations and how they make friends and stuff on the road.
People don't realize there is so much socialness happening out there. Oh my gosh, we have so many friends, but we can come back to that. I just don't want to make it sound like we're like sheltering them. But like prior to this, like kids would be in daycare with other daycare kids, and we'd see the kids pick up negative behaviors and things like that. And I feel like with the little 2, we've been able to see how our continuous presence and involvement in their lives has allowed them to really grow into these like exactly what we wanted them to be. Do you know what I mean? Like we've been able to mold them into these kind, compassionate humans, where, and I'm not saying my older 2 aren't kind and compassionate, but we had to unpack
some things that they learned from the school bus.
Sure.
And then kind of rebuild some of those attitudes and behaviors.
Yeah. And it's a skill to function in a classroom space. It's a skill to function in a tight family space. And it's a different learning opportunity. And yeah, you don't have to unlearn those negative behaviors or deal with bullying or so many things like that.
Not in the same way. We do like the internet, unfortunately, opens up a whole new side of bullying that we've had to deal with, especially with our older two, who do have some more freedom on the internet.
That's sad, but true.
Yeah. But things also, to keep aware of, you know, and I'm grateful for this opportunity because I'm not confident if we hadn't developed such a close relationship over the past couple of years. And this is not to say that other parents can't develop that close relationship in a home without wheels under it, right? Just so happened that in my story, you know, being in this situation allowed me to be more present, you know, and now the kids open up to me when stuff like this happens. Whereas it's not like I had to hear it from another parent on the playground.
What initially got you out on the road to begin with?
I just wanted to. My husband and I both were raised, I feel like, in similar financial constructs where neither one of us was a very wealthy family. We didn't travel very much as children, and we hadn't seen much of the world or country even. When I found ourselves in a situation where I was self-employed, he was kind of filling that home role. So he was doing like the cooking, dishes, the cleaning, stuff like that. Like he was taking care of the home. I was taking care of business. And there really were no ties holding us to where we were at the time. We were in Phoenix, Arizona, and there were no real ties holding us there outside of the kids in their school. And so I started to just dig around and learn about it. I'd always been interested in travel blogging. One of my first successful entrepreneurship ventures was writing a mommy blog, which I started, oh gosh, I'd have to like do math and figure it out. But it was back when my third kiddo was very little. So it was probably 2013. Sorry, I did the math. But anyhow, so I'd always been interested in travel blogging, but it seemed so out of reach. Like these people must be like already wealthy, right? Because they're like traveling all over the place, going to these,
and now they're condescending to write about it. So what's that about?
And so I'm like, I couldn't do that because I don't have the money, I don't have the connections, I don't have whatever. But instead of focusing on the things I didn't have, I looked at what people who were living like the RV life, like what were they doing? How did they get on the road? I talked to people, I joined Facebook groups. And then I started to realize that it is doable. It was doable for us. The homeschool laws in Arizona are laughable. Having originally come from New York, where we did look into homeschooling, and it's very rigid, very structured, lots of regulations. Arizona has almost none. So I knew that I could handle that. You know, like there was going to be nobody making sure that we were following a certain curriculum. And the hardest part was convincing my husband, who had told me on our first date that he never wanted to go camping again. That was the hardest part because he was like, no. Like, remember, I never want to go camping again. But I'm like, but it's not a tent. Like, we're in an RV. If anyone's listening, don't let it fool you. RVing is camping. I made the argument and I really believed it, but like, I'm taking it all back now. He was right. He was right. But it's been good. He's a good guy. He supports all my ambitions and without a big fight. And so we're here. But we are working on our exit plan soon because this isn't the way he wants to live his life. I could probably live like this forever, but you know, we make compromises, and
sure,
I know that we're going to find the right balance too, because he's also willing to not give up the RV once we settle down. So we'll still travel. It's just he wants to have that home base.
Yeah, I can understand that. We've kind of settled in a place where obviously we're back home, but every chance we get, months in the summertime, um, going out and doing things or taking time off, like whatever we need to do to scratch those itches and also come back to some of the security and the friendships and things
Yes.
that are fun to have. It's just it's we get to create our life. It's really beautiful, and we get to create our experiences for our children. And just because there is a typical way to do it doesn't mean it's the right way. I'm sure there are people listening, and they're probably horrified that you chose Arizona because it has lax homeschooling rules, and I can I can empathize with that, but it's not about you trying to get away with not educating your children. This is not like what is
Sure.
that book Unschooled that like I read that in the beginning of my homeschooling journey and that was terrifying and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to end up like that family." And like yeah. It's not
And we
about that.
didn't
It's
choose. We were in Arizona. Like
yeah.
that's where we
Yeah.
were. So we
Right.
didn't
Yeah, you
like,
were already there. You just had the contrast. And like
yeah,
and just like choosing to live this way, it's not about getting away with stuff. It's just about having the creative freedom. And it's just a lot of time and effort to do reporting. And
exactly.
we've done like an online charter school that helped with funding and we were really grateful for that. But it was a lot of work to report in the way that they wanted us to and the way they wanted us to and in the timeline and all these like hoops that we had to jump through to be financially compensated for some of our curriculum. And I'm not choosing into that right now. I'm just homeschooling without any of that because it is so much work. And you are also running a business and you're traveling and you're doing all these other things. What is that juggling of time and children and noise look like? Do you have a regular routine that you fall back on?
Yeah. So it's a lot of communication. I feel like communication might seem like I don't know, the cliche answer, but it really is the answer is communicating with everybody. So I do have, and I don't want to get like too nitty gritty and have it be like uninteresting, but basically I'm off every Wednesday. I take Wednesdays off because the middle of the week, I find that to be the easiest time if we want to go out and do exploring at a museum or, and again,
Mm-hmm.
COVID, but museums, movie theaters, anywhere, right? During the week is much less crowded than the weekend. And so I made a decision early on that I wasn't going to work on Wednesdays. Wednesdays were going to be our family time. This way, if we want to go anywhere, whether it's the library, a museum, the mall, wherever we want to go, there's fewer people on Wednesdays and we get to enjoy each other and enjoy our activities. So I'm off every Wednesday. And then I only have calls typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which makes it easy for me to coordinate Wi-Fi time if I have to
Yep.
like drive in somewhere to get Wi-Fi. So I typically only do calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then
And there's
Mondays and
also the
Fridays.
competition for Wi-Fi space. If your children
True.
are using it, your husband, like I've run into those issues.
Yes, yes, yes. So it's partially a schedule. And then it's also that communication. I let my kids, every day, every night, we talk about what's on the schedule for the next day. The kids know if there's times I need them not to be using the Wi-Fi, and we make plans for what they'll be doing instead, whether it's, exploring outside or playing quietly in their bedroom or whatever the case may be. So just communicating so that everybody is on the same page and we all work together. We're a team. And at this stage in the game, 2.5 years in, they're very used to that and it works well for us.
That's great.
They also do all of their schooling typically in the morning, and I am not a morning person. So I typically don't start doing things for work until about 10 in the morning, whatever time zone we happen to be in. Whereas they're early risers and they're good about math and reading are what they have like self-directed lessons on
Mm-hmm.
their tablets, computers. So they'll get to work and get that work done, sometimes even before breakfast, just so it's out of the way. And that's just skills that they've developed on their own. They know they can do it and get it out of the way. If they need help, they have to wait till after breakfast, but they're still typically done by about 10:30 with school.
It's so cool. It's so awesome that they can be getting an education and then also have all this free time to then go and explore. And I'm sure your older kids have a little bit of extra freedom in that. Just being the ages that they are, that's really, really
Exactly.
cool. Yeah. If you're weirded out by homeschooling, those listening, there is so much more there then we can get into this podcast episode. But maybe we will address that topic at another time because it is a completely different way to live. It's a mind shift. It's even just calculating the length of time it takes to do something. It is very different when you're homeschooling versus in public school. It does not take 8 hours or whatever to get those things done. So
I don't have a class of 20.
Right. Yeah. And then you're meeting each child where they're at their correct stage. And so it's just like a more potent learning experience when it's set up appropriately. So I think that's really awesome. Do you feel like with all the different things that you have in your life right now, do you feel like you are stretching or growing or whatever ambition feels like for you? Are you feeling satisfied with that, or are you constantly craving more?
That's a great question. It's a tough question because I think I don't know if I'm ever truly satisfied. I think part of being satisfied for me is that I am always craving more. Like,
yeah.
I don't ever want to get to a point where I'm done learning or done experimenting, trying something new. But that being said, I feel like I feel like all my boxes are really being checked off. The internet is an incredible thing. So right now I've identified what I want to learn, what I want to focus on in 2022. I almost forgot what year it was.
It's okay. Time has lost all meaning to me. So
right?
You could have said 2020. I'd be like, yep.
The other day I wrote 2020 on an email and I was like, oh shoot, that was 2 years ago. But yeah, so it's like I'm constantly pushing myself in the way that I am running my business. I mean, I think that's just an entrepreneurial thing, right? To always try to be innovative and to try new things. I'm expanding educationally. I've joined a incredible program this year focused on building an equity-centered business. Equity is my word of the year.
Nice.
I'm trying to be more equitable in my life and the way that I interact with my kids, my family, my life, all the things, my business. So yeah, I feel like I'm constantly looking for educational opportunities that fuel me, that allow me to grow and become a better mom and a better business owner and a better person. And we have so many of those. My kids are just incredible too. And I know everybody thinks that about their children, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity to learn alongside of them with so many of the experiences that we've had. You touched on learning about like the native lands, and we've recently found a website where everywhere we go, we can put in the zip code and it will tell us like what the native land is that we're on. Like,
I think that's native-land.ca.
And we learn about, the Native Americans. And I think it is. Thank you. Because I couldn't remember that. And so that's been one of those websites we've loved using as we travel so much. It's often hard for me to remember. I mean, it's hard for me to remember where we are, period. But at least this way we can learn about it as we go, and be more intentional about how we're spending our time and how we're learning about the land and the people and the history.
Mm-hmm. It's very beautiful. Thank you.
I hope that answered the question. I feel like I went 100 different ways.
No, you did. So I can really identify with what you were saying originally about kind of growth being the part that brings satisfaction, the pursuit of knowledge, the constants of learning, the constants of reaching, that is what brings that like peace and satisfaction. And it's not stopping or achievement or, checking off a box that brings that feeling. It's like the evolution of personhood that feels so good. And I think for ambitious women, I think we can align with that, because I've wondered myself am I just never satisfied? that like that song from Hamilton, Never Be Satisfied.
Oh, yeah.
Like, is that me? Am I just unsatisfied with life? And I don't think that it is. I think I just have a passion for growth. And when I honor that that's where that peace comes from. And it's not like a hustle thing. It's not a constantly being busy thing. It's stretching and growing that I just really love. And
being
we both
challenged.
value that. So I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being challenged. Absolutely.
Yeah. You said that much more eloquently than I did.
You're totally good. Well, thank you so much, Meg, for being on here today. Is there anything else that you think our audience, our ambitious women, when considering motherhood and parenting and individual relationships, should consider, or any advice you want to share?
I feel like the biggest advice I could offer is not to get too caught up in comparing yourself to other people. I love that you interview a whole bunch of women, bring a whole bunch of perspectives, a whole bunch of, perspectives is the only word I can think of to the table. But don't get too caught up in comparing yourself to other people. It is okay to be on your own journey. It is okay to do things your own way, whether it is the way that you are homeschooling your kiddos or the way that you are living in a home with or without wheels. That it is okay. So I feel like that is the biggest thing. Don't beat yourself up. Don't compare yourself to other people. You are on your own path, and you can write your own story.
I love it. It's so freeing.
Yeah.
And really then you get to choose your life and you get to build it however you want. And that is that's totally rad.
You can pick bits and pieces from other people's stories and then form your own collage of what you want your life to look like.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Thank you so much, Meg. If anyone would like to follow your journeys or maybe work with you, where can they find you?
So I'm going to give you Instagram for following my journeys. We are Family Road Ventures, all one word. So Family Road Ventures, that is where we post our travel stuff. And megbrunson.com is my business-related links and information.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I just started following you on Instagram, and it's bringing back all kinds of really fun memories. I have my RV journey is Big Round Schoolhouse on Instagram. If anyone wants to go there, I haven't posted very recently just because we're not actively traveling right now. But sometimes I share homeschool stuff on there and some neurodivergent stuff. But I've loved connecting with you. So many resonant things that I feel and lessons that I've learned, and I love seeing other people just exploring that space and stepping out of convention to do what really works for you. And it's just like a signal of the fact that you are a little bit divergent, and that means that you're living the life that you're building yourself. And I think it's really rad and I admire it. So thanks so much for being on, Meg.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for spending time with Meg and I today. I have loved this discussion so much. I hope you have as well. I am going to find a way to work in homeschooling and neurodivergent children and road schooling and living in an RV somewhere into the podcast. I don't know where it's going to fit yet, but if that's a story you'd like to hear about, message me on Instagram, Women of Ambition Podcast, or visit my website and shoot me an email, because I have a lot to say on this topic, but it's not completely what this podcast has been in the past. So if you want kind of a bonus episode on that or to hear a little bit more, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll just see where it fits organically in the podcast coming up. So thanks so much for being with us today. I appreciate your reviews so much. I appreciate you sharing the podcast with your friends and family. And I appreciate your private messages that you send me. Notes of encouragement and appreciation. They mean the world to me. So grateful for them. Next week is going to be our 1-year anniversary of the podcast. I look forward to celebrating that with you next week as we continue our segment on ambitious relationships with spouses. See you then.